Everybody, this is Schubert here, reading October Sky by Homer Hickman, Chapter 8, Part 2. As soon as Jim hit the front door after school, gloom and anger descended on their house. He showed his displeasure by throwing his books on the living room floor and stomping up and down the steps, slamming doors. That's Sonny's older brother. And yelling at Dad the moment he got home from work after causing a debacle. "That's enough, Jimmy," Mom astonished, said to him. Dad stood stricken with silence. "You've ruined everything," Jim whined. "I won't get a football scholarship now." "You go to college," Dad said sternly. "I'll pay your way through. Don't worry about that." "But I wanted to play football in college. If I don't stand out my senior year, no college is going to pay attention to me. I'll never forgive you, Dad." Sorry. "James and Bill Hickman, I said that's enough," Mom said, her tone of voice turning hard and flat. That was her warning tone. Jim opened his mouth and then clapped it back to shut, recognizing that Mom was on the edge. He stomped up the steps, making Daisy May jump out of his way, and slammed the bedroom door shut. Later, while Dad retreated to the living room and Mom fumed in the kitchen, the football boys from Colwood gathered in Jim's room, plotting a futile anarchy. I had no sympathy for them. I was not even above stirring the pot just a little. I cracked the door open to Jim's bedroom, suggested with a little glee that there might be room for them in band. Jim sprang after me, and I ran back to my room and locked my door behind me. "You're dead, Sonny," I heard him say in the hallway. A cold chill went through my spine. So solemnly was the statement made and confirmed by a cluster of huge muscle boys standing outside my doorway. It was as if somehow everything bad had happened to them was now my fault. Little wonky there, huh? The gloom seemed to settle over Colwood. The fence-line gossipers mostly agreed that Dad had acted stupidly. A common thread to talk was that he'd grown too big for his britches. Dad didn't deliver any lumber and tin to Cape Colwood, that even though he had promised. After giving him a week, I decided to take direct action and went up to the mine carpentry shop to see Mr. McDuff. I entered the immaculate little shop, freshly sawed pine and oak, and found him working with a shrieking bandsaw. He shut it down, and I told him what Dad said, that I could have some wood. He pushed his hand under the white cloth cap and scratched his head. "News to me, Sonny. But there's a pile of scrap lumber behind the shop. I guess it's okay if you take. You'll have to go see Pharaoh for 10. How's your mom like her new fence?" As far as I knew, she liked her resurrected rose garden fence just fine. It sure wasn't going anywhere. Mr. McDuff had built it back, posts thick as telephone poles, and beams that could be used as headers in the mine. The scrap lumber he sent me to look at was behind his shop, was a stack of beautiful tongue-and-groove pine boards. When I asked Mr. McDuff, also slipped me a big box of nails. I called Odell, and a couple of hours later, I heard the familiar rumble of the garbage truck pull up to the shop. He loaded the boards and headed for the big hangar-like machine shop to run in neo-military flat fashion by Mr. Leo Farrow. Sorry, I'm trouble with these names. I shouldn't, but I do. Rows of lathes and mills, sharpeners and drill presses pressed, whined, ground, and hissed at us as Odell and I stepped inside. 20 men working the day shift, producing replacement parts for the fine machinery and lubricating a variety of ductwork and support structures. When I asked for Mr. Farrow, the men at the machines waved back to his office, a windowed cage overlooking the shop. Mr. Farrow leaned back in his chair, hands clasped behind his head, and listened while I made my request for 10. Sorry, Sonny. I had some this morning, he replied amply, but Junior Castle came by and got part of it for a doghouse, and Reverend Richard got the rest to patch his roof of his church. He leaned back. Even if I had some, I don't give any away out of the shop for even just scrap. You want something? I like to make a trade. You got it? I admitted I had nothing to trade for scrap 10. He shrugged. Well, there you go. Come back when you do. I decided to go see Reverend Richard. We found him behind his church, pondering his little tin shack. I wondered what he had traded Mr. Farrow for it. The Reverend was dressed in a black suit with a black tie, and he had just come from a funeral. His shoes were black and white, long and narrow. He was holding a straw banana hat. Hi, boys, he said absent-mindedly when he saw me. Sonny boy, I sure do miss those newspapers you gave me. I missed your stories, sir. Odell told him what we needed. Love to help you. I really would, he said, but I don't have enough for my roof as it is. I looked up. But your roof is shingled. He nodded. If I had shingles, I'd use them, but I don't, so I gotta use 10. Emmett Jones has a bunch of shingles stacked up next to his coal box, Odell said. Almost the same color. Do tell, Little Richard said, suddenly interested. I reckon I'd be up for a swap if you could manage it. We were starting to figure out how this trade in coal wood actually worked. We found Mrs. Jones pushing the lawnmower. Emmett's at work, she said, eyeing the garbage truck. But if you'll bring me a load of good plantin' dirt, those shingles are all yours. Best plantin' dirt down at Big Ranch. We went by Odell's house to pick up 2 shovels and a pick, and we kept going past Cape Colwood to where the road turned back up the mountains, beside the mountain stream. Odell and I worked to clear a place, picking the shoveling ditch. Black West Virginia loom into the truck. We were covered in dirt and sweat by the time we were finished. Mrs. Jones was thrilled when we arrived with our load of dirt. Oh, my flowers will be glorious, she said, as if she could already see them. Just as the sun dropped below the western ridges, Odell dropped off our 10 at the cape beside the lumber and the nails. The next morning, Quentin hitched over the mountains in time for breakfast. Mom made him eat an extra pancake. Then, when he was done, he was so stuffed he could barely walk. I raided the basement for hammers and saws and threw them in the back of Roy Lee's wreck of car. He picked up Sherman and Odell on the way. Odell had drawn up a plan for our blockhouse on a scrap of notebook paper. I'm not the carpenter or the carpenter's son, he chanted as we sawed and drove nails. But I'll do carpentry until the carpenter comes. The sun beat down on our backs, and the slack of the cauldron refused to heat. To keep the morale up, we sang enthusiastically. We went through the parts we could remember. Be-Bop-A-Lula, The Great Pretender, Blueberry Hill, and That'll Be the Day. If we didn't know the words, we just repeated the ones we did know over and over again. Roy Lee had a good voice. With a sly eye in my direction, he gave us solo renditions of the Everly Brothers. All I Have to Do Is Dream. with mediocre lyrics. Dream, dream, dream. All Sonny does is dream. Dream, dream. So on and so forth. I laughed off Roy Lee's song, but it stung just the same. When we got too hot, we went to the muddy little creek that ran behind the slack dump and sat down on the rocks to let the cool water run over our feet. Quentin was so hot he was feeling dizzy, stretched on a rock, and we left him and went back to work. We got to have a launch pad too, Odell told us. Nobody here will ever pour concrete. Or will anybody ever pull concrete, I asked the group. I'm not the concrete pourer, the concrete pourer's son, came back a cheerful chorus of replies as Quentin staggered a little, wandering up from the creek to join us, complaining that a crawdad had bit him. I declared the day's work an end. We were pretty exhausted. When Mom saw Quentin, she was astonished me, or got after me, for being heartless and cruel on the poor boy. She made him drink enough water to sink the battleship Missouri, fed him corn and beans, and then sent him to sleep in my bedroom. I got the spare bed blankets out of the closet and bedded down in the living room on the couch for the night. Dad came in and found me there, switched on the lamp. Heard you've been raiding my shops, he said. I peeked above the blankets. You said what I could have, what I could scrap. I guess I did, he acknowledged absently. And then there seemed... Take a note. Why are you sleeping on the couch? This is where he goes through to explain. Mom invited Quentin over, and she's allowing him to sleep in his bedroom. They then made a joking remark about Bivosky and his new job. Dad goes on to don't use any more of the company's supplies. And they told him good night and switched off the lamp. Alright, that's about the end of that chapter. Dad just then went to bed and he enjoyed his night on the couch.